Hello and welcome to the Season 6 finale of the Weekly Waypoint, and if you're wondering what the hell that means, it's just that starting from next week I'll have been doing this for 7 years running. In fact, some might argue that starting from this week I have accomplished 6 years of a Weekly Waypoint. I'm always a little bit confused as to which one to celebrate on, but honestly, if you're celebrating a year of something, you're celebrating the 53rd week, aren't you? Because the 52nd week is the last week of up until that year. It's confusing. Maybe it isn't to other people, but it is to my tiny brain. Today, as you can see, we are continuing the Halo theme from last week. We are playing this time some custom games in Halo 2, and all anyone seems to want to play on custom Halo 2 servers for some reason is Swords, which is basically just be the first person to click when the reticule turns red. Reticule? Reticulated splines? I was experimenting with Weekly Waypoint thumbnails for a while there, trying to make the thumbnails match the things that I talk about and not so much the gameplay that's on show, but I think it's probably a good idea to swap back to images from the gameplay, because, not to get obsessive over views, but last week did significantly better when I swapped back to that. But hey, maybe it's also just because I'm playing Halo, and people like Halo, and I'm more than happy to oblige. Last week I talked about the fact that I was rewatching Red vs. Blue and had got up to Season 7, and if you didn't watch last week, I did talk a lot about the idea of machinima, and also the idea of that show and how it swapped from being a comedy-only thing to like a comedy-drama kind of a thing. Well, this week I finished up to Season 10 of Red vs. Blue, which for those of you in the know means it's all the Bernie written seasons, and 11, 12 and 13 are good too, and as far as we can tell from the trailer, like, they still matter, whereas maybe later seasons do not. But yeah, I've got to say, Season 6 and Season 9, some of my favourite seasons of Red vs. Blue. They're just bloody fantastic. So for those of you who don't necessarily remember, Season 6 is the one where they started the, I guess, Freelancer Saga or whatever it's called, where they started talking about the lore of that world and some of the more serious elements of it for the very first time. Season 7 is where the first animation stuff popped up, and that was really fun too. But in terms of story, Season 6 is really good in my opinion. Season 9 is really good in my opinion. That's the first one where it's kind of like the prequel season, where they go back and talk about how a lot of this stuff even started out, and of course Season 10 wraps that up. But whenever there's like a two-part thing, whether it's 2 seasons or 2 movies, I always seem to enjoy the first part of that the most. I'm the same with like Avengers and stuff like that. Speaking of which, I mentioned it a few weeks ago, I am still slowly making my way through the original X-Men cartoon. I just last night finished the Phoenix Saga, which is in Season 3. I don't know how it was handled in the comics and how much was changed for the cartoon, but I was surprisingly bored by it. Honestly, it's the reason why I've slowed down on the X-Men cartoon, and it's because I was looking forward to finding out finally about like what the whole Phoenix thing actually is. And the first like I would say the first 3 parts of that 5-part series kind of boring. Like, it's just kind of like, oh, there's lore happening. You're learning about the Phoenix and its place in the universe and what's going on, but they kind of concentrate on like other things for a while, but the last 2 parts like kind of deal with the core issue, and they're a couple of fun episodes. So I am still slowly making my way over to X-Men 1997. That's not the title, it's just 97, but I like to be thorough, damn it. The most I've enjoyed that cartoon so far is Season 2, where they did a lot of like character-focused episodes, because I don't think I talked about this in detail before. I really liked the episode that focused on Rogue's backstory and who she is. I really liked the episode specifically on Beast as well. I wasn't a huge Beast fan until that episode, and then he became like one of my favourite X-Men, so it's fun to finally get a grasp on who these characters actually are after years and years of being a Marvel fan and just kind of like not having anything to do with X-Men, and that's probably partially because I was, like a lot of people my age, onboarded to the Marvel Comics universe through the MCU, and then instead of going and looking up like, oh, what are the X-Men about, because they're not in the MCU, I looked up my favourite characters like Spider-Man. Speaking of which, I just now caught on to the fact that the new Ultimate Spider-Man line that they're doing is being written by the same guy who did House of X, Powers of 10, which is the only X-Men comic I've ever read, and is also one of the best comics I have ever read. It's fantastic. I probably geeked out about that when I was reading it back during the Weekly Waypoint episodes around that time, but even as someone who at the time knew next to nothing about X-Men, that was such a good comic series to read. So I'm really excited that he's writing Spider-Man as well. I found out about this because Ultimate Spider-Man issues 1 and 2 have just hit the Marvel Comics app subscription thing, because those comics appear 6 months later than they hit the shelves. And I'm very much a Marvel Unlimited comics reader. I don't really go out and buy comics like that. I didn't grow up with comics in that kind of way, and I've got enough to catch up on in terms of just having the subscription service instead of like trying to keep up with a brand new comics and not know what's going on. But it's interesting that I'm telling you all this, because I'm not currently in a phase of reading Marvel Comics. I don't have a subscription to Marvel Unlimited, nor do I have a subscription to DC Universe Infinite, which is their version. I'm not reading comics currently, and I do feel the pull to go back and get back into reading some comics. Because just like everything I do in my free time, I intermittently obsess over it and then, do not care about it. But I'm holding off for now for a few reasons. Firstly, I have enough subscriptions going on right now. And secondly, I also have enough story things going on right now, and I would like to try and finish some of them before I get waylaid by comics again. I am also still trying to continue that series I started, where I'm reading through all these physical Batman comics I own. I did record half of the next episode, but you know what? I've had an entire week off and I haven't continued it, so clearly the passion for that has kind of fallen by the wayside. But maybe, no promises, but maybe I'll try and get back to that tomorrow, or the day that you're currently watching this, Monday, if you're watching it on release. That Batman comics read through, if I finish it, will be an 85-part YouTube series, so the fact that I'm stuck on episode 2 is not a very good sign. But the thing is, I'm enjoying it. It's just because it's a comic I've read before, And also, I've had I don't know if I'm going through some sort of depression right now. It's weird to say, because I don't feel sad. But I know a big symptom of depression is losing interest in things. And at the minute, throughout my entire week off, every time the sun sets, like it's almost dead on. Whenever the sun sets, I lose interest in everything. I have been begging for a week off for a while, because I had so many plans for things I wanted to do with my free time, and then when I'm given the free time, I suddenly do not have the desire to do anything, and it's so frustrating. I will literally just sit here going, I could do this, or I could do that, I wanted to do this, but all of it has lost its appeal. It's like having no appetite. Except if you're concerned, I should add, I don't actually have no appetite in terms of food, I'm just talking interests. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, my week off is coming to an end, and I have spent a lot more time than I would like to have just kind of sat around doing nothing, because I can't settle on a thing to do, because nothing that I originally wanted to do is appealing to me anymore. Don't worry though, I'm sure I'll snap out of it. Probably when I go back to work and suddenly don't have as much free time anymore, I'll be like, wait, damn it, now I want to do all of these things. That's probably how it's gonna go. One thing I did really enjoy doing during my week off though is I binged the series Free Body Problem, and I've not read the books. But it's, for those of you who don't know, it's a sci-fi series, and it's a little tough to explain the premise of. It's one of those ones, the less you know about it, the better it is. So I'm not going to give too much away, but it's definitely sci-fi in terms of like, it's science fiction. It is fiction about science. And the basic premise, from the earliest onset is that, everything scientists think they know is kind of turning out wrong. And a lot of scientists are, like, a lot of the leading, like, physics scientists are ending their own lives. And people are like, that's concerning. What's going on there? And then there's this whole other plot line which takes place a little bit further back in time with this physicist and the things she gets up to, and it's just a really bloody good story. And if you want to binge 8 episodes of something, I think it's 8 episodes long, that is a good thing to binge. I'll be perfectly honest, and I'm not going to give any spoilers here, don't worry, but the thing that got me interested in it was a spoiler. Like, I listened to a podcast called Morning Somewhere. Is it Good Morning Somewhere, or is it just Morning Somewhere? Anyway, and one of the hosts there, Bernie, was occasionally talking about Free Body Problem, and then at one point he was like, I'm going to talk about spoilers here, so you might want to tune out. And I just didn't tune out. Normally, even if I have no plans on watching a series, I will still, like, tune out, because I'm like, well, maybe I will have plans at another day. But this time around, I was like, I don't care. Like, I was in the middle of doing something while I was listening to the podcast. I was like, you just keep going. And he mentioned something that made me go, oh, you know what? That is interesting. I'm going to go and watch that. and it wasn't like a massive spoiler. It was like a premise spoiler for like episode 4 or 5, I would say. And again, I'm not going to give it here, but it's an interesting argument for like, while I would never opt to be spoiled on something, sometimes inadvertently being spoiled on a plot point can make you more interested in a series. Not everything has to be a complete surprise or be completely fresh all the time, and that is an opposite viewpoint to one that I've held for most of my life. And again, I would not seek out spoilers, but maybe I'm going to be a little bit more lax about avoiding them for shows I have no plan on seeing. I don't know. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a creative project which I am going to heavily preempt by saying this may not ever happen, and if it does, it may end up looking drastically different to how I am going to talk to you about it today. But I've spent some of my week off cooking up, I don't really know how to describe it other than calling it like a gaming memoir. If you've ever read Nerdcube's book, Fuck Yeah Video Games, it's something very similar to that. And I don't know how many people have made books like that, but basically the idea is, and mine's structured differently to Fuck Yeah Video Games. I think Dan does it by console or whatever. I've kind of done it by like chronology of my life, but the idea is just writing about your favorite video games of all time and what they meant to you and like the context around you getting it and that kind of thing. And if this sounds very similar to my blog 32-bit brain, then yeah, I'm basically the working project title for this. I hesitate to say the word book, the scary B word, but yeah, the working project title here is 32-bit brain, the book. And to be perfectly clear, most of what the work I've done on it so far, because it is like super early stages, like super early stages of a thing that might never happen, is I have outlined the different chapters, which is more work than it sounds like. I have outlined a total of 49 chapters, including the prologue and the epilogue, and I'm sure over time I will decide that some of those chapters don't need to exist, or I will merge some of those chapters together, because those chapters are not all individual games. A lot of them are like collections of games, like these are the racing games that I played as a kid, because I'm not going to be able to write an entire chapter about just one of those racing games, and there's not enough space in the book to give every single racing game that I played a separate chapter. But yeah, I thought it might be fun to attempt that, except I wrote halfway through the first chapter and I've been struck by this sense of, would anyone care though? Is this something anyone would actually care to pick up and read? Like, I'm also writing a more general autobiographical thing. I don't know if I've mentioned that before. And I've got further through that, and that does feel a little bit more like something people might actually care to read. But the more I write about this, you know, this video game lifetime thing that I'm doing, the more I'm second guessing myself and going, it's one thing when a YouTuber writes about their video game experiences, like a famous one, but like when you're just some guy, I don't know. But you know, they say write what you know, and if there's one thing I know, it's video games. As I was kind of drafting out the chapters and what they could be, I did draft out a bunch of chapters for an era of my gaming life which I am really bloody excited to write about. And any writer would probably tell me to write those chapters first, but I get really hung up on writing in chronological order, which is probably why I've never got anything done. Anyway, if that sounds like a project which might interest you, I could always use encouragement. Again, this will probably never come to fruition, but I'm starting to toy with the idea of like maybe telling people about my creative projects at their early stages, instead of just keeping them entirely to myself and be like, it's gonna be really cool, I'm gonna do a big reveal. I'm not gonna be one of those people who constantly says he's working on things and never actually makes anything, except the opposite side of that is if I just never say I'm working on anything, people think I'm don't doing anything. I mean, I can't even speak English, so how am I supposed to write English? But yeah, that's a thing I'm working on. So make what you will of that. Speaking of older video games and creative projects, you may have seen last week I published a bonus video on Saturday of a Pokemon Leaf Green randomizer, which might sound like not the most cutting edge idea anyone has ever had. I know that Pokemon randomizers were kind of big like 10 years ago or whatever, but while I have tampered with randomizers before with Pokemon, I've never actually sat down and done a playthrough. I've usually just like gone into Route 1 and be like, haha, wow, look, there's a Rayquaza here, how crazy. But with all of this news about Pokemon Legends ZA and like I bought Dragon Quest Monsters because I was really itching for a Pokemon style game, and it didn't really do it for me. And you know, I've had this kind of Pokemon feeling for a few weeks or months now, and it hasn't really been satiated, and I don't really like the latest Pokemon game. And so it's been a long time now since I've actually played the older Pokemon titles, despite being really familiar with them. Despite having played through them multiple times, it's been a very long time since I've actually laid my hands on Pokemon Leaf Green. So this Pokemon Randomizer series isn't just a way for me to be like, haha, look, random Pokemon everywhere, how crazy. It's also a way for me to actually play through Pokemon Leaf Green again and be like, oh wow, I forgot that the sprites looked like this, and that it played like this, and that there are these quality of life features missing that I forgot I was relying on now, and stuff like that. And I'm having a really good time so far, and the plan is to play through Leaf Green and then maybe Emerald, although I really don't enjoy Gen 3. I know that's sacrilege, I'm sorry to say it out loud, I'm not a big Hoenn fan, but maybe do that, and then, you know, Diamond and Soul Silver and onwards to however many have randomizers available to them. Although, actually, maybe when we get to Pokemon Black, it'd be better to just play through Pokemon Black, because I've never finished that game either. But yeah, I don't know how that Pokemon Leaf Green video is doing at the time of publication, and it's always really hard to tell how a video is going to do this early on, but I really hope people check it out and enjoy it, because I really enjoyed recording it. There was a lot of crazy stuff that happened that I'm really glad I got recorded, and it's honestly reminding me that I record these videos. You know, it's nice to get views and everything, and it's nice to serve an audience, but at the same time, this entire YouTube channel was originally just a hobby for me and me alone, and if that series continues to get very little views and I continue to make them, it's because that's why I make these videos. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, I really enjoyed making Pokemon Leaf Green Randomizer, but it didn't get enough views to justify its existence. That's a shame. I'm going to have to stop now. That's not how my brain works. That's not how me making videos works. Like, obviously, I tie some amount of an idea of success and gratification to series getting lots of views, but at the same time, it would be almost impossible for me to continue playing through that and not continue to record things and react to things and then feel the need to share those things to other people. So while I really hope that it gets views and people check it out, just be aware it is something that is going to continue happening on this channel. I think Nintendo are really missing a trick by not implementing some kind of randomizer game mode natively in those games. They could even sell it as like DLC. Like, I know they're probably concerned with, you know, easier methods of obtaining these Pokemon and then sending them to Pokemon Home, but honestly, just make it so that if you're playing through that game mode, it's not possible to transfer those Pokemon to any other games, right? I have no idea how difficult that would be from a coding point of view, but it sounds like it shouldn't be that difficult, and it would be an easy win for them, because I would like to be able to play an official version, like, especially with, like, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and stuff. A way to really spice up those remakes would be to include native randomizer game modes, because they're really popular. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Let me know about anything down in the comments below. Like, did you enjoy what you had for breakfast? Let me know about that. I'm joking. Don't do that. I'll see you in whatever I make next. Oh wait, I forgot to mention, also I've got back into World of Warcraft lately, and they did some really cool stuff with the Night Elves, and also with the Gilnean Worgen and stuff. And, yeah, okay, that's truly it for me now. Bye.